to Kay's Corner. We are still self quarantining and taking the advice of Mayor Turner and the other state officials of social distance, working from home, things of that nature. So I thought this would be an opportune time to do a Kay's Corner. Why not, right? So today's Kay's Corner, I wanted to discuss the highly anticipated, well, it was highly anticipated for me, the Netflix series called Self-Made. It stars actress Octavia Spencer along with co-starring Tiffany Haddish and Blair Underwood. There was some really good actors in the docu-series, and I just like to give my 2 cents. This may contain a few spoiler alerts, but I will try to keep them to a minimum. I really have always been intrigued by the story of Madam C.J. Walker, who was a self-made female African American millionaire. She specialized in hair care products for women of color at a time where that was essentially unheard of. I learned a lot of things from watching the docu-series. For example, I did not know that her products were not her original idea. So the idea to actually sell products came from another female entrepreneur at the time that had basically solicited her for products. And in the documentary, or in the, not documentary, in the Netflix series, the two of them developed a somewhat, I thought initially, camaraderie or relationship, friendship. But I later found out that it was not that at all. That she was basically just in it for money, and she ended up using her to her advantage. But you'll see that in the series. I also initially in school, in like elementary school or whenever I first heard about Madam C.J. Walker, I did not know that was not her birth name. Her name was Sarah Breedlove. And the lady that she initially got the idea from, her name was Annie Malone, and I think in the Netflix series she's called something else. Um, but Miss Malone basically solicited her for her products, and she began using her products on Sarah, and it ended up causing Sarah to gain better self confidence about herself, and ultimately her hair grew back. And not only did it grow back, it grew back more healthy, more strong, and so she was able to draw from her own personal experience with the products to sell the products for Annie. Well, initially she proposed her to sell them for her. So I did enjoy that that bit of education that they put in, that background information that we did not initially know, or at least I didn't. I also enjoyed the different depictions of sexism, colorism, and racism that was in it. So, like, on the surface of this story and her story, you already know there's racism. So you go into it watching it knowing that that's going to come out. But then while you're watching it, there's so many other different dilemmas that come into play. So it's been an age old debate about good hair versus bad hair, and how that plays a role in dark complected African Americans versus lighter complected African Americans, and just that mentality or that narrative that's been built up for generations to come. So the docu-series does go into those instances. It also deals with gender bias. So I mean, just the thought that she was able to sell her products and essentially come to be the first African American female entrepreneur millionaire by her own merit was just mind blowing. It's always been mind blowing for me. But to know that she came in face of so many obstacles, especially those dealing with her gender, just amongst her own people. I'm not talking about, a white man or a white woman putting her down or trying to hold her back. I'm talking about black men trying to hold her back and just keeping her from reaching her dream, but she still did it in spite of. So it talks about that, a lot of that survivor's remorse kind of resentment, or the crab in the barrel mentality, to where when she finally was getting where she wanted to be, people in her circle and in her family did not support her entirely, or just was doing things on the back end against her. Now, I'm sure some of that was put in just for the sake of a storyline and for the sake of entertainment, because it was a Netflix original. But it's not far-fetched to imagine that those things probably did happen to her. So for that, I did enjoy it. The parts that I did not enjoy was just the big gap. So her story, Madam C.J. Walker's story, takes place in like the early 1900s, right? So she was born December 23rd, 1867, and she passed away May 25th, 1919. So that space in between that time already tells you what era we were in, the 19th century, coming out of, probably still in slavery, probably right around the cusp of the Emancipation Proclamation, things of that nature. So it wasn't like too, you know where to go in your mind, in other words. But the music choices and some of the somatic scenery was just off. It was just like, what is, put my mind back where it needs to be, which is in, early 1900s. And people probably didn't use some of that terminology. They probably didn't have those type of mannerisms. Like, it was too new schoolish. It kind of reminded me of like, I wouldn't even say Harlem Nights, because Harlem Nights did put me in the mind of that time. And you don't even have to have been around at that time to know. You could just feel it. You know the stories, you know the that place, like Color Purple. I don't really know exactly what time frame Color Purple was supposed to be depicting, but it puts you in that mind frame. They had old music that would have coincided with that time. They had the clothes to go through, yeah, to complement that time. They had the language to complement that time. Even the slang and the different catchphrases that we still say to this day complement that time. This Netflix movie did not do that. They were saying too many like slang terms that would have came in maybe the 80s or the 90s, or maybe even to this day. Then they had some trap music in there. It was just all over the place. And I'm like, I really wanted this story to be good. Like, I really wanted them to bring it. And it could have been so much better had they have not had the trap music and the different antics that was going on. So there was splashes of like, people would talk to Madam C.J. Walker or Octavia Spence's character, and tell her, well, you need this image of a woman selling your products, and then they would have a fair skin or a lighter skin black woman on a tricycle, and she's got her hair in a bun, and she's got the big dress on, and she's being very comical on the little tricycle, and there's several of them. And it kind of like shows you where her mind was, because it kind of shows you her kind of contemplating, well, I do kind of want to sell more products. And you are right, the fair skinned, lighter skinned woman would sell more products, but I have to be true to who I am. So it kind of showed her having those battles with herself. So it did kind of show her having those thoughts and those battles with herself. And then there's a lot of flashback scenes. They'll show you her as a little girl in the plantation in the cotton field, and things of that nature. While I do think those flashback scenes are appropriate sometimes if they're tastefully done, or if they're inserted in the strategic spot in the film, then it transitions better to the viewer. It didn't. Some of them did, and sometimes they didn't. But you'll see that for yourself when you watch it. And then like the comical things that kind of shows her perspective. I think the one where the ladies is on the tricycle, that kind of relayed good to me as a viewer. But then when they started to do it too much, I was like, okay, this is excessive. Um, that I didn't like. The music, and just the somatic. So, like for me, the best era producing somatics or screen virtual visuals and all of that visual effects that I really enjoyed was Queen and Slim, because I don't know exactly what time frame, but just by looking at that film I got like a early 90s vibe, maybe even a late 80s vibe. Their clothes, their language, their mannerisms, the way the different shots were taken through the lens, you were in that time, right? It put you in that era. It made you feel like you were there exactly. Even Color Purple, like I said, it I don't know the exact era that it was supposed to depict, but to me it depicted like 1930, 1940. You saw it when they showed the violets in the field and the girls were running through the violets, or when they showed pictures and images of the shack and of the house, and even the shack that they built that they turned into Harpo's Club. So you saw it when you looked at the water in the river. You saw it even at the church. It made you feel like you were in an old southern church. It's hot. The women are fanning. You can see the sweat. You can see the preacher, and he's preaching, and spits flying everywhere, and he's just drenched in the word, and the visual effects was grainy. It was rough. It put you in that time. This was like super clear images, super bright images, lots of colors. Even some of their characters' clothing had purples and pinks. While I do think they wore that back then, they were a little bit more toned down and subtle to me. Dull, I would think, more pastels, not so much as these fuchsias and bold colors. I think they did a good job with the hair. You know, styles and things of that nature. I really liked that telegram thing when they were trying to get the results of the fight, and they had the little telegram thing. I think that was good. Now, in the beginning of the movie, when she's being abused and her hair is coming out and stuff, that to me was good. So if they just kept those scenes and those images and that clarity, if they kept that up through the duration of the film, maybe it would have been better. It would have put you in that frame of mind. But other than that, it was Madam C.J. Walker's Trap musical. It was just a lot. Um, Also, I think, like I said, I think everybody did a good job. I really like Tiffany Haddish. I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I enjoy some of her work. And I think this would be a no for me in terms of acting. She didn't bring it. So you have Octavia Spencer, which is this really powerhouse of an actress, and she's giving these speeches that's supposed to hit at your heart and tug at your emotions, and then they do, because Tiffany Haddish plays the role of her daughter. So you have these conversations between mom and daughter, and then you can tell how you're supposed to feel just by watching Octavia Spencer do her role or say her lines. And then the camera focuses on Tiffany Haddish's character, and she's just not prepared or ill prepared, or she's not responding with enough force. And it's just like, oh, that whole scene was missed because you didn't catch your cue. You didn't. If you have somebody that's a strong lead like that, you should be able to just come behind them, and it should be seamless. It shouldn't be like, you must have did your line yesterday and I'm doing my line today, because it wasn't there. So, but that's my opinion. But anyway, I do think that it's worth looking at and judging for yourself. We can't go nowhere anyway. Hello, you might as well watch some Netflix. So I highly recommend that you watch it, if at all, just to learn some things that you didn't know, and then go back and fact check it to see if that was really her outcome. I do like that at the end it gives you some facts and it tells you some background information about her, and I thought that was great, because I learned a lot about her that I didn't know, and it made me appreciate her even more so, knowing that she had a story, and knowing that she took a hell of a journey just to be able to get where she is. So it gives me confidence as an African American female myself, that if she can chase her dreams against such powerful odds, then there's no reason why we can't, as women, chase our own dreams just as well. So thank you for tuning into this case corner. We'll have plenty more, child, because I'm working from home. See you next time.